Welcome back. Well, a new poll shows Karen Bass is leading in the Los Angeles mayor's race despite the surging success of political outsider Spencer Pratt, who used his campaign to point out Bass's failures as the current mayor, especially when it comes to homelessness, cost of living, and the botched wildfire response and recovery. You might remember Mayor Bass was in Ghana during the deadly fires that ravaged her city after saying she wouldn't leave the country. Joining us now, Kira Davis, host of The Orange Report, and Antjuan Seawright, Democratic strategist. Great to see you both. So, Antjuan, do you think that Mayor Bass is doing a good job in L.A.?
I do think she's doing a good job, and I think the voters are demonstrating that through survey after survey in terms of their approval. Look, votes at the ballot box are a pure demonstration of trust, and when people give you a pre-flirtation of their trust in polls, I think you have to take it for what it is. Now, that does not mean that polling today is going to reflect polling tomorrow, but what it does mean is she has been consistent. I think she's tried her best to deliver on the issues that she promised in seeking the office, and I think that's what people value and appreciate about the political process.
You know, Kira, watching her in recent days as Spencer Pratt has been gaining on her and gaining in the polls, she keeps saying, well, he has a point about this and he has a point about that. It's like, well, you're the one in charge of those things that have gone wrong at this point in time, ma'am.
I'm sorry, I'm still reeling from Antjuan saying that she's done a great job and she's been very consistent. I guess he's right. She has been very consistent. She's been consistently awful. Homelessness is terrible. Crime is terrible. The reason why Spencer Pratt is surging so much is because LA is a disaster area. Skid Row's 45 blocks. I mean, we can go on and on. $400 million for 1,500 units for homeless people that never got used. I mean, we can go on and on and on. There's a reason why we're talking about this race in the first place. That being said, yeah, of course. What does Karen Bass have to run on? She has nothing except being a Democrat. She has been in charge of this city for the last 4 years. Democrats have been in charge exclusively in Los Angeles and across California for the last 16 to 20 years. There isn't a single thing that Karen Bass can point to that has made the lives of Angelenos better. And that's exactly why she's in this situation. I know what the polling says, but we still have a large number of people who are undecided. And a lot of that polling comes from the union crowd, which is, you know, a shoo-in.
Right. Antjuan, it's also interesting to watch how LA prioritizes things. I mean, you have one of the former candidates who's, essentially dropped out of the race, trying to say that backyard barbecues should be banned as a means of fire prevention. That, of course, doesn't address all the other issues. They're doing things like pulling people over for windshields being broken and petty things like that against people trying to get to work. But when it comes to real crime or filling up the reservoirs, they don't seem to have any other solutions rather than just saying you can't grill your hot dogs over the summer.
Look, every race is different, from the state level to the federal level to the hyper-local level, i.e. a mayor's race. And so people prioritize what they prioritize. But what you cannot dispute or what you cannot underestimate is what the voters are telling you, whether it's research or what they're continuing to demonstrate at the ballot box. And if we want to talk about policy and if we want to talk about priorities, certainly we can see true reflection in that and how President Trump, as a candidate, did not give true definition to the issues yet he became president. And not to compare the two, but it goes to show you that voters decide how they want to vote for a candidate based on a number of things. And sometimes it's not deep dive on a policy issue, but more of a personal connectivity. And that's why I mentioned earlier, a vote is a demonstration of trust at the ballot box. The voters clearly trust Karen Bass, and they continue to show that through polling.
There's a lot of Democrats in LA and a lot of Republicans who have left town. But Kira, is this race really even about Republicans and Democrats, or is this just about people being fed up with the current status quo and one-party rule in Los Angeles for so long?
Yeah, no, it's not about Republicans and Democrats. What an odd thing to bring Trump's name into this. You know, and Trump has no authority here. He is not running for office here. Angelenos are not suffering high amounts of homelessness, crime, the lowest education rates in the country because of Donald Trump. This is so odd that Democrats want to keep pushing his name into this election. This election is about Los Angeles. A lot of people, if you ask, don't even know what party Spencer Pratt is representing. They don't care. The reason why he's making such a big splash is because people don't feel heard. That's why in that one debate that he got with Nithya and Karen Bass, he made such a huge impression, not just here in California, but across the nation. People have been talking about Spencer Pratt ever since. That's not because he's just some Autobot like Karen Bass or Nithya Raman. He's speaking to real needs that people are feeling right now in Los Angeles. And I think that's where the groundswell is. That's where the indicators are. Nobody has counted a single vote yet. So you can't talk about what the voters want. We're only talking about what the pollsters are finding. Those are different things.
Antjuan, go ahead and respond, but I want to get to another topic, so quickly.
I can't even take you serious in your comments when you say the president of the United States does not have anything to do with what happens in a city within the United States that obviously generates funding from the federal government. So I certainly can't take you serious. And then
President Trump is not responsible for an ounce of crime here.
And then you follow up with unserious comments saying because a vote has not been cast, that polling does not demonstrate what voters feel. So why in the hell do people like me who do campaigns survey what voters think if polling does not indicate how voters feel? So I cannot even take your comment serious if that is your true expression.
Okay, you cannot like my comment, but you can take me seriously. This is a serious thing, especially for Angelenos. This is not politics.
Yeah, no, it's true. Crime is a very serious thing. But I want to get to this, Kira, before we go. The Supreme Court of the United States rejected the Virginia Democrats' final effort to bring their beating in Virginia of trying to redistrict around the Virginia Constitution and breaking the law. They basically are now faulting the Supreme Court for their loss, even though the Supreme Court had nothing to do with any of this. So they have a new talking point, but they still don't have their new redistricting.
Yeah, what I love is how Democrats in Virginia are talking about this. This is terrible for the unchecked power of the state. Every time something doesn't go their way, they talk about unchecked power of SCOTUS, unchecked power of Trump, unchecked power of the state. It doesn't seem like they really care about the unchecked power. They just care that things aren't going their way. And so then they have to blame like a rogue state, a rogue body. SCOTUS has nothing to do with Virginia's own Supreme Court. It was a state issue. The state court ruled. But Democrats, as always, are sore losers. So they hate Supreme Court on any other day of the week, but they want Supreme Court to solve their problems. Yeah,
exactly. Antjuan, final word to you.
Yeah, you want to talk about all the things you just mentioned. Keep in mind, we have a president who started a redistricting war because he knew he was going to lose the midterms. And what our argument has been in Virginia is that the people's will was carried out by way of elections, and now we're overturning.
But the elections were held illegally.
Y'all should have left Texas alone. You should have left Texas alone. Let them do what they were mandated to do when we had those problems. This is on you.
Let's ignore the fact that we had a president who tried to say that.
We're back to blaming Donald Trump. We got to run. Kira Davis, Antjuan Seawright, great to see you both. Thank you for joining me. See you next time. Thank you.
Thank you for watching. Subscribe below and download our NewsNation app right now on your phone, and you will get fact-based, unbiased news for all Americans.